So I just want to say thank you very much firstly to Michael and the SWAN committee for allowing me to speak here today. I'm very excited about that, and just to say that myself and the one other Irish social worker that is here are very excited and very, I suppose, invigorated and motivated to continue on and try actually start SWAN Ireland, because we are literally in the very initial stages. There are two of us in SWAN Ireland right now. So I suppose today my presentation is going to be very quick and very short, and it's going to be about the two campaigns that I'm specifically involved in terms of social work and social justice in Ireland. So this is the first poster that SWAN Ireland have. I made it myself. This is what we have currently. So we don't have any money to make it or buy an actual banner yet, but anyway. So my background is I was a social care worker for about 7 years, and I worked in the areas of intellectual disability and homelessness. Then I went back to college and I qualified as a social worker in 2010, and I have experience in the areas of child protection, fostering, medical, community development social work, and I'm currently a mental health social worker. So the current context of Irish life. We have, I'm going to do this very quickly, we have the global recession, we have the Irish experience of this, which was the Celtic Tiger dying, the property bubble exploding, austerity measures, the IMF bailout package, the new government continuing to implement old government's plans under the pretence of new thinking, the increasing gap between rich and poor, the widening of inequalities in Irish society, the retraction of human rights and equality as important issues, the free market, capitalist and purely economic issues at the forefront of the current government's mind, to the detriment of ordinary people's lives. Unemployment continues to be at a record high. It was 14.4% in February 2012, and Ireland officially re-entered the recession at the end of the last quarter of 2011. However, there is a counter-discourse running alongside this, I suppose, unfortunate stream of events. We have Occupy Dame Street, we have Occupy University, we have the emergence of new leftist political groups such as the United Left Alliance, we have People Before Profit, we have the continuation and strengthening of the Socialist Party and the SWP. We have the emergence of civil society groups such as the Spectacle of Defiance and Hope, which I'll be talking about, S.P.A.R.K, which is Single Parents Acting for the Rights of Our Kids, which I will also be talking about, Anglo Not Our Debt, Claiming Our Future, Unlock NAMA, independent think tanks for social change, and most recently, and probably most successfully, the campaign against the household charge. Again, extremely quickly, the history of social work in Ireland. A very small amount has been written about social work in Ireland. There's basically been one author, Caroline Skehill, who has written about social work in Ireland. So we have a very small way in which to trace our history. But basically, social work is only just over 100 years old. Our first qualification board was only introduced in 1997. Up until then, to become a qualified social worker, you had to get validation from the UK. Then social work, it came about quite late in Ireland compared to other countries such as the UK, mainstream Europe and America. There were parallels, I suppose, between the development of social work in Britain and Ireland, but some points were unique to Ireland, such as the fact that political struggles to become free of English rule took precedence and took, I suppose, social reformers were involved in doing that as opposed to maybe getting involved in social work related struggles and activities, as was the case in other countries such as the USA. But the most important thing is that before social work developed as a profession, religious organisations in Ireland had a complete and utter monopoly over any social service that you would consider in any way social work related in Ireland. So that would be along the fields of education, care of the disabled, lone parents, mental health, etc. And specifically the development of childcare services and services for women in Ireland can be seen to directly have been influenced by the overt hold of religious organisations in Ireland. So, the two campaigns I'm involved in is the Spectacle of Defiance and Hope and S.P.A.R.K. So as a social worker, I instinctively tend to work from a framework of human rights, social justice, social change, critical theory. I consider myself a macro social worker, a radical social worker. I intrinsically believe in working from a community development approach, whether my job title suggests it or my boss suggests it. My involvement in the two campaigns I'm discussing evolved through my worldview as a social worker and my understanding of the absolute necessity of social workers to engage in macro or social change work. So the Spectacle of Defiance and Hope, which you can see a picture of one of our protests here, is a broadly based alliance of community organisations from Dublin and beyond. In 2010, a large number of groups came together to protest and challenge the programme of cuts that were imposed on the youth and community sector specifically, and draw attention to the savage economic injustices that were taking place in Ireland. The Spectacle is for an Ireland of true equality in the conditions of people's lives. In December 2010, we organised the first powerful Spectacle of Defiance and Hope event in which all the community organisations from around Dublin participated. Then, in 2011, the second protest of creative resistance took place. This one was modelled on the French Revolution. There you go. You'll get it in a second. People and community groups all over Ireland were asked to contribute books of grievances and hopes. So within the last 2 years, large numbers of projects have been cut or closed in areas which already experience frightening levels of inequality. So the idea behind the books of grievances and hope was to provide a forum and an accessible format where people could express their grievances at what is happening to ordinary people in some sort of coherent way. This is a way for ordinary people to express their anxieties, concerns, frustration and anger at the decisions of the last government, which are being continued without any great change by the new administration. So I was part of the organising committee for the spectacle, and I personally mobilised a number of projects in a particular area of Dublin that is one of the most disadvantaged in the country. The 3 projects I engaged with had never been involved in any civil society group or protest before. I was initially met with a huge amount of resistance by these groups, as they told me that they had never been consulted in any way before, they were mistrustful, and they were disparaging of how engaging in a process such as this could be of any benefit, to them and to their community. So, through many conversations and long facilitated sessions where the groups physically made their books of grievances and hope, they began to articulate and voice their excitement at realising that they actually had a voice and that they were being given an outlet and an opportunity to voice their anger at the government, at those who have ignored them, and at those who continue to oppress them. The groups I engaged with are the invisible in Irish society. They were representative of some of the groups in Irish society who have been marginalised before the Celtic Tiger, throughout the Celtic Tiger, and continue to be even more oppressed and marginalised now. So alongside this was the current situation. So there's some of the books that we made. Alongside this was the parallel of the current situation of social workers in Ireland. I could clearly see the similarities between the invisibility and oppression of the groups I engaged in the Book of Grievances and Hope process and the invisibility and oppression of social workers as a group in Irish society. I believe that in order to be able to stand in true solidarity with the oppressed, one must be critically conscious and cognisant of one's own disempowerment. I believe that social workers in Ireland are disempowered through many mediums, such as managerialism, increasing bureaucracy, the continued shrinking space that we exist in professionally, the increasing individualisation of workers, and the increasing distance between social workers and service users through these measures. So, being cognisant of these parallels, I wanted to try and begin the process of aligning social workers and service users. I'm very active in the Irish Association of Social Workers. I'm chairperson of a national special interest group for new social workers through this, and I'm also part of an international group which is aligned to the IFSW, the European region, which focuses on issues of equality and human rights. So, utilising all of those contacts, I contacted every social worker that is part of the ISW. I asked them to contribute to a social work book of grievances and hope. So you can see the back of that one there. And I did this through email, and I asked 4 basic questions, which are up here. And the reason I did it through email was because I knew there was absolutely no way in hell I would get any social worker to physically come together to engage in this process and talk to each other about it. So I did it through email. It also meant that social workers could answer the questions anonymously, so that made it safer for them to actually tell the truth about how they were feeling and about how their service users were feeling about the current context and measures of austerity, etc. So what I did then was I collated all the responses into an actual book, and then I invited everyone to attend the protest in December. So in the end, approximately 500 people turned up to the spectacle of Defiance and Hope protest in December. Some of the service users from the groups I engaged with turned up, and actual social workers turned up, which I was amazed and delighted at. Where we are at the moment with the spectacle is we're trying to figure out a longer term plan to figure out where the spectacle is as a concept and how best it can serve its purpose as a means of creative resistance to the increasing inequalities in our society. And we're also trying to plan to show the books in I suppose, some sort of public space, whether it be the National Gallery, or we're trying to get them into the National Library of Ireland as actual books, so they're there forever. So these are some of the pages of the books that we made. So the next campaign I'm involved in is S.P.A.R.K, and S.P.A.R.K is a diverse group of single parents living in Ireland who have united together to protect their children from the radical policy changes introduced in the budget 2011. Their aim is to raise awareness of the many challenges one-parent families currently face and to identify the essential supports needed to allow them to have equal participation in society. They assert the rights of their children to be treated equally and demand acknowledgement and recognition of their family status. They oppose any economic, social, political or legal policies that have a detrimental effect on their children or them as single parents. They are asking for equality for their children regardless of their family circumstances. The main thing that stands out about this campaign is that it is run almost entirely through social media, so Facebook, Twitter and Google groups. To me, this represents a new way of organising compared to the more traditional approaches of meetings and physically bringing people together. The use of social media as an organising tool has allowed a group that could not possibly have come together physically often enough to actually mobilise. It has allowed them to mobilise in large numbers and at a rapid pace. The campaign only began in November 2011 and it has already succeeded in hosting 2 successful protests. It's coordinated numerous media stunts and it has secured a lot of support from the opposition ministers in government and a lot of prominent academics in the country. So my involvement in this campaign began at the end of 2011. The December budget in Ireland literally attacked a number of vulnerable groups in our society, namely young people with disabilities, young people attending schools in disadvantaged areas and single parents. The government immediately reviewed their attacks on young people with disabilities due to a huge and immediate vocal backlash by the general public. They were slower to reverse the cuts made against schools in disadvantaged areas, but they did so recently after, again, continued and vocal backlash by the general public. However, the one group they continue to attack is lone parents. Now, I don't have the space to go in here to the specific economic attacks the government has made on lone parents, but they can be found on S.P.A.R.K's website, which is SPARKcampaign.com. The point I would like to make here is the importance of social workers building alliances with and supporting campaigns such as this. Technically, I don't have any direct contact with lone parents in my day-to-day work as a social worker, but that does not stop me from understanding the connection between the framework that I work from as a social worker, as I explained before, and the significance of standing in solidarity with groups like S.P.A.R.K. S.P.A.R.K epitomises the way our society continues to view single mothers as something to be ashamed of, as a drain on society, as leeches on the social welfare system, as something to hide away from the good people in society, such as the Magdalen laundries. S.P.A.R.K epitomises the way women continue to be subordinated within our society. For example, our Constitution in 2012, which is the foundation of all Irish law, still explicitly states that a woman's place is within the home. S.P.A.R.K epitomises the continued invisibility of children and of the invisibility of children's rights within our society. For example, a children's rights referendum has continually been promised to people in Ireland since the late 1990s. But yet, the family is given all precedence in the Constitution, and the family is defined as a heterosexual married couple. S.P.A.R.K epitomises the continued overt stranglehold the Catholic Church, or at least the Church's values, morals and its insidious nature, has on the people of Ireland. S.P.A.R.K stands as a representative for women's rights, for children's rights, and the possibility of one of the most invisible and vulnerable groups in Irish society to create a counter-discourse to the predominant Catholic, conservative and patriarchal one that has ravaged our country for the past century. That's it. Thank you. And just to say, you can see our poster at the very back there. I'm holding that one at the back, but also I have references and resources, but if anyone wants to email me for particular references or resources or for a copy of the presentation, my email is there. Okay, thank you.